Hello and welcome to the latest video and podcast from Fantasy Football Scout as we look ahead to Fantasy Premier League Game Week 10. It's team reveal time when myself and Fantasy Football Scout step here to Tom Freeman, revealing our early thoughts for Game Week 10 and our transfer plans. This is especially important for Tom because he is wildcarding and he's got a couple of drafts that he'd like to share with us as well. Tom, welcome. How are you?
Yeah, I'm okay. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, like you say, on a wild card. So I always find them quite full on wild card weeks because you're kind of researching so much, you're keeping an eye on price rises. But I feel like I'm kind of getting closer to it. We never decide on a wild card team we're recording this on Tuesday for a Friday deadline.
No.
I'm sure there'll be some changes, but it feels like, you know how it happens throughout the week. You get closer to that final 15. We've got a couple of drafts today. We've got one which I'm currently on, and then we've got a Son draft as well. So, yep, should be good.
Okay, right, yeah. Well, let's have a look at the fixtures first. So these are the fixtures that will be front of mind for you, wildcarding. These game weeks 10 through to 15, so it's the next six fixtures. And they show that Crystal Palace surprisingly at the top, but they haven't got much attacking threat at the moment. But of interest, perhaps, if you want one of their defenders as an enabler, because you can definitely field them as a good first sub, or indeed if you need to. Brighton are next. They got Fulham, Everton, Sheffield United, Nottingham Forest, Chelsea and Brentford. And then Arsenal, they got Sheffield United, Newcastle, Burnley, Brentford, Wolves and Luton. And those watching the Goals Imminent video and live stream we did yesterday, or rather this week, we did a big focus on Brighton and Arsenal players to get in, mainly their midfield. But we did a focus on them. So do have a look back at that. We've got more detail there as well. West Ham are next. Good, strong fixtures. Everton, Brentford, Nottingham Forest, Burnley, Crystal Palace and Tottenham. And then Burnley, and then Liverpool have got Nottingham Forest next up. Then Luton and Brentford. Got a tricky City game, a Man City game, Game Week 13. And Sheffield United, and then Fulham and then Sheffield United. Amongst those with the worst fixtures are Chelsea. They got an awful run of Tottenham, City, Newcastle, Brighton and Manchester United, Luton, Brentford, Man City themselves, apart from Bournemouth in game week 11. They've got some tough games, Manchester United, Liverpool, Tottenham, Aston Villa, but it is City. But yeah, overall, looking at the next six fixtures, what is this all telling you team-wise about your wild card?
Well, the swings at the top, the Arsenal and the Brighton ones were key reason for targeting this week, really, and tripling up on Arsenal and getting one, maybe two Brighton. We've just spoken on the Goals Imminent video, and that's kind of got me thinking about maybe other options which I could explore, but there'll definitely be one. I haven't got any Palace. I've owned Mark Gahey all season, been quite a reliable defence to plug into. He could be a 4.5 I consider on the wild card, but it's certainly, from an attacking sense, it's Brighton, it's Arsenal, it's Liverpool, and Villa are a bit low on that. You know, you look at those fixtures. I guess it's the Tottenham and the Man City games, but having watched Spurs last night, Fulham created a few chances on the counter. So I think Villa could maybe be bumped up that a little bit. So because they're a team that I've got Watkins like most other managers. No.
Yeah, I think with Aston Villa, so if I was to do this next five, they would be certainly up there. So just to for the benefit of those listening on the podcast, they've got Luton next, Game Week 10. Great fixture. Then Nottingham Forest, Fulham, Tottenham and Bournemouth. That's all up to Game Week 14. Great run. Then they've got Man City in Game Week 15, which makes it a bit trickier. But yeah, if you discount that, they're definitely a team that wildcarders should be targeting now. And also non-wildcarders as well should be thinking, right, if I haven't got Watkins or Cash, or how would I get them in? But yeah, it's a fixture swing, which is a classic time to wildcard because these are players that we haven't got, and especially because you don't have Salah at the moment, or rather you do.
I think most people who don't own Salah are probably the people like me who haven't wildcarded. Mostly anyway. I think the game week 8 wildcarders were able to get on Salah at the right term. They've had 2 double-digit hauls since. Albeit there's been 2 penalties in there, but Salah's a great player to own, isn't he? And I'm going to I'd always eyed it this week, and I thought Brighton, Everton, maybe I can get away with it, and I didn't. But now is not the time for continuing that experiment. Let's get him in.
Well, let's go to your first draft then. This is a 3-4-3. And this is your wildcard 10. So do you want to take us through the players that you're considering there for this 3-4-3?
Yeah, so I'll just read out the team and then we can kind of zone in on the interesting bits, I guess. So 2 goalkeepers, which is about as cheap as you can realistically go, and that's why they're there. Areola, who I bought in game week 3 for Turner, he'll stay. And Strakosha is the cheapest player in the game, the cheapest goalkeeper in the game. I don't think he'll take over from Flecken, but he's there as an enabler, isn't he? So that's the goalkeepers at the back. I suppose the main 3 to start, certainly this week, is Gabriel, Tsimikas and Cash.
Yeah.
Then I've got a Colwill. Chelsea's fixtures aren't great, but I've kind of got one eye on game week 16, I think, and just having a player there who will be able to come in there. He won't play much before that anyway. Gives me a bit more depth. And then Taylor as well, another bargain bin enabler at 3.9 million. Midfield, it starts to get a bit more interesting. Salah obviously coming in, double Arsenal, Saka and Martinelli and Mitoma. So plugging into those, Brighton, those Arsenal fixture swings. And then Makate is the 4.4.
Yeah.
There's a few 4.4s. I'm not overthinking that, but whenever I watch Makate, I quite like him. And then 3 strikers, Watkins, Haaland and Darwin as well, which, he feels like now the international break rest has been done at the weekend. He came on, he got the assist. Quite excited. Think he could do quite well over the next few, and I'm willing to just tap into that for this Forest fixture, and then just take it on a week by week basis. But I love him as a pick. He's a chance magnet, and when he plays, he makes an impact. So yeah.
How much do you have in the bank for this one, and what's your team value?
0.4 in the bank.
Okay.
And my team value is 101.5.
Okay.
So that's lower than a lot of people who've already wildcarded, who have benefited from Watkins going up in price, Salah going up in price. I haven't had that. No. But I'd imagine if people are wildcarding this week, I'd imagine most people have a similar amount to me. So it's probably doable.
Yeah, so. I think so. So, I mean, I'll tell you what I think. What I really like about it is the Colwill pick, weirdly, is one of my favourite bits of this, because you're looking ahead to game week 16. And I remember wildcard I did where I got a Leicester player in about 5 weeks before Leicester's fixtures got good. This was back when Leicester were good. And so, and when everyone was going to go for that defender, that Leicester defender, I already had him in place, so I could think about another move. So I quite like that. And we looked at the fixtures that Arsenal, Liverpool and Villa, you can play their 3 all the time.
Well, that's the thinking. You could go for somebody like Gahey in that slot. That Colwill's there, but when are you going to play him? Well, you're not. And it might be in game week 16. Villa's fixtures, they play Man City in 15, and then they start to tail off a little bit. We don't know where I think Robertson will be out, but we don't know what's going to happen there. And so it might be quite useful to have that player who can then slot in.
Definitely.
Saves a transfer further down the line.
Yeah, definitely. Although Crystal Palace's fixtures from a defensive point of view are very good, next 6 part, especially after Tottenham. Colwill is not a bad sub to bring on, even if the Chelsea's game bad. There's still the potential of an assist. There's still the potential of a clean sheet with Chelsea, because
Chelsea's defence has been pretty good this year, so I'm happy to have him there.
Yeah, certainly. So I like that. So there's a nice balance there. It doesn't feel like, sometimes you get wildcard, you think, I'm going to have to wildcard that again in a few weeks.
Yes.
This doesn't feel like that at all. This feels like really set up for every eventuality. One thing I would say is, have you considered, instead of using this sort of setup as a 3-5-2, but perhaps going without Darwin, because you've got a bit of money in the bank, you could get, say, Archer instead of Darwin, and then you could upgrade Makate to Bowen.
Considered it, been playing around with a few. It just depends how confident. If I think Darwin starts against Forest, I'm happy to plug him into that spot. But if there are doubts around it, there's nobody else really in the forward pool that I want this week. Alvarez in 11 could be really good, but I already had Alvarez, so I've sold him already. So I'm not going to go back there with that. But yeah, that's exactly what I'd probably do if I'm not confident of that Darwin start. Go down to Archer, bump up Makate to probably to Bowen, like you say,
Yeah.
who feels like a good pick. Or if I wanted to get a bit more Villa, then somebody like Diaby, who hasn't been returning recently, but it's exactly like we spoke about Watkins in game week 4, game week 5, Joe. There's nothing wrong with the
No,
performances there.
no.
The stats haven't been great, but the eye test is telling me that he's involved. He's going to be a good pick. I'm sure of
Yeah.
it.
But yeah, so I mean, I would have Bowen is a sort of an omission that has been
Yeah.
in a few previous wildcards last week or so, and I think his fixtures will now improve, but
Yeah.
also lack of Spurs as well. And I know we'll look at a
Yeah.
Spurs version of this in a 3-5-2. But I was thinking, in defence and lack of Newcastle as well. Now, I guess obviously Darwin can become a Wilson or Isak, so you've got that price point there. But with something like perhaps a Gordon in midfield instead of McAtee, but then you've got to cut some corners somewhere else, so that would bring sort of Darwin down to an Archer. But also perhaps maybe a Dan Burn or I mean I'm guessing Trippier is just not achievable for you at the moment.
Yeah, I think, I love Trippier as a pick. I love Tottenham, Madison. I love Son. I'm not
Yeah.
saying they're bad picks. It's just a fixtures play.
Yeah.
And rather than Madison, it's going for Martinelli, who plays Sheffield United and Burnley in the next 3 game weeks. It might not come off. Madison is more involved. He's
Yeah.
probably got more routes to points. But I just feel like if you're going to have a wild card now, the edge might be in getting that second Arsenal attacker. And I feel like it's an opportunity which I might kick myself if I don't go for it.
Yeah.
I mean, Tottenham have got Palace on Friday. Palace are traditionally tough defence at home, but then they didn't look great at Newcastle. So it wouldn't surprise me if Son gets something in that. But then it's Chelsea, Wolves, Villa, Man City, West Ham. Yeah, they can score in those games, but it's just basically it's prioritising the fixtures over the player themselves. And that's what I think I want to do with this wild card. And that's why there's players like Matoma in there as well, is to try and get on those players before they're massively popular. Because if Martinelli pops at the weekend or Matoma, then they're going to be big transfer targets given the fixtures that are coming up. So
I mean, obviously those at wildcard in game week 8 or just before or last game week will still use a free transfers to get players in. But ultimately, the difference here between a game week 10 wildcard and a game week 8 wildcard is being less inclined to ditch Haaland, I would say.
Yeah.
And I was because if you look at the fixtures, you've got Bournemouth coming up soon, so you start to look at that and you think, I don't want to go without Haaland for that. Whereas a couple of weeks ago, it was obviously it's always a bold move, but a couple of weeks ago it was a move that could be done. And you can take that risk because maybe you didn't think maybe he would do that well against Brighton, and that was the sort of key game there. But Bournemouth feels a bit more risky, and so I think that would be a change. The other one is obviously you can go for that Arsenal. Not only can you get an Arsenal midfielder, you can go for an Arsenal triple up with those 3 there. You can you're not playing catch up with a Brighton mid. You're getting Matoma in there. And the only other changes are sort of on the peripheries, really. Instead of Colwell, most Game Week 8 ones, they've probably got maybe a Palace defender, maybe they've got Dan Burn.
Yeah, I think it's Newcastle and Spurs, isn't it? I think most Game Week 8 wildcarders will be going in with a Spurs player, probably a defender too, either Porro or Dogi, and they'll be going in with Trippier. And that's generally the difference is there. They've all got Watkins, they've all got Haaland, they'll probably have Saka as well, they've all got Salah.
Yeah.
So
and Tsimikas as well. You can just go straight for Tsimikas. You don't have to use a transfer there. Just get him on the wild card. And of course, no Turner, which is not a bad thing because Turner's going to be firm on my bench for a long time anyway.
Yeah, it just feels like I could get him a playing goalkeeper, but it's 0.2. And if I'm not going to play him, Forest fixtures aren't great. I think why not just go down to Strakosha? I did consider Luca Dean over Cash as well to free up a bit of money because Luca Dean's obviously playing every week. He's playing very well at the moment. His stats are really good up against Cash. He puts a lot more crosses into the box. He's a bit more advanced as well. Cash is still a great pick, though. Don't get me wrong. He's got more goal threat. But I did consider that. But Dean's on 4 yellow cards. We've got Alex Moreno maybe coming back in 2 to 3 weeks. So it might create a problem further down the line. I certainly don't think Moreno will walk back into the team because Dean's playing so well. But yeah, I don't feel like that's worth the point four saving or whatever it is. So cash is loaded in there for now.
Yeah, I mean, I really like this draft, and I think the only potential change, which is quite a nice change, is just simply the having changing it to a 3-5-2 within two moves.
Yeah.
Darwin and McAtee to Bowen and Archer.
That could be something which happens. So let's just see what happens with Liverpool on Thursday.
And then that would be exactly, if I was wildcarding now, that'd be very similar to what I would go for. And I agree with you about you got the points of difference and taking advantage of that Arsenal attack. And Brighton attack is one of the key bits there. This is your 3-5-2, which I already said off air that I don't like as much.
Yeah,
and nor do you. But so for the benefit of those on the who would you captain, by the way? Whichever you go for.
What, as in this coming game week? Who will I be captaining?
10, yeah.
Oh, I'll be captaining Salah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's pretty certain that I'll do that. Yeah. But yeah, so the 3-5-2, I mean, having watched the game last night, Son, centre forward, there's a buzz around Spurs at the moment, isn't there? It's hard to lose a player like that. When the fixtures aren't terrible, I don't think they're great for Spurs, but they're not like playing Man City, Newcastle, Arsenal in the next three or anything like that. No. So then immediately you start to kind of look at ways in which you could try and keep Son, and this is the best way I've managed to do it. So it basically, you're losing Colwill or a 4.5 million defender, and you're dropping down to a 4 million Branthwaite. So you lose a bit of depth in the squad this way. The other moves, you change your structure. So instead of a 4.4 McAtee, you've got 4.5 Archer. Doesn't really make much difference, really. So the two main moves is it's Son and Diaby, or Martinelli and Darwin.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of the structure change there, I suppose. And Son and Diaby, I think, will do really well. This maybe feels a bit more like a Game Week 8 wildcard, doesn't it, Joe?
This is very similar to a lot of setups. Yeah. So I didn't have Diaby. I went for Neto. Other people maybe got Gordon in or got Diaby in. But definitely went for Son. But yeah, so I like this one to an extent. I mean, I can't argue with that midfield. I can't argue with, the front seven. But it's weirdly, it's that lack of Colwell is what I don't like, because it could be Dan Burn, it could be Anderson, Gahey. And it says you've got to play Gabriel, Simicast and Cash every week, which for the next few fixtures looks okay. But as soon as there's an injury, as soon as Arteta thinks, you know what, I think I will play Partey as right back and Gabriel's going to move out of defence.
Yeah, or Joe Gomez comes in or something for Simicast. It could create problems, couldn't it?
So suddenly you then got to play one of Charlie Taylor, who I think isn't he suspended next? I'm not sure. I might have that wrong.
No, not that I'm aware of.
No, they're fine. No. But anyway, you don't want to play him.
I'm just going to check. I'm just going to check now anyway.
And Branthwaite at Everton, you probably won't want to play. So immediately that's looking like a transfer that's got to be made.
It was Connor Roberts, Joe, who got suspended for Burnley.
Sorry, Connor Roberts.
You got the Burnley fullback.
The other one. But yeah, so immediately that says to me there's a transfer to be made there. And then with the midfield as well, you're losing that edge that you talked about, that Martinelli Saka edge, which I think I prefer. And then you've got Diaby and Matoma, so you've got two players at the same price point there. So that also feels a bit inflexible, because you've got to either go down by about $1 million or so, or go, or if you want to go up to say a Bowen or something like that, you've got to spend a bit more money. So yeah, as I said, it's struck. I mean, you can't argue with those players if those play every week, but it doesn't look set up for the long term, does it? So yeah, that's why I prefer your.
And the other setup just excites me a bit more. We play this game for fun, don't we? We want to, and the other team just feels like with Darwin and Martinelli, and then putting them next to very reliable players like Salah and Watkins and Matoma, It just feels like there's that's currently where I'm leaning
Yeah,
towards. I'm sure it will change a little bit because we've still got a few days before deadline, but
yeah.
yeah, that's where I'm currently at.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. No. So just for the benefit of those watching, I'll just put this 3-4-3 up again. So this is the team. This is a similar team, more like what you would probably go for come Friday,
yeah,
because it is a Friday deadline this time. In that 3-4-3, yeah, which can easily become a 3-5-2. It's very flexible. I like this. It's a long term one. Whereas that three five
yeah.
two, so that's something for people who are wildcarding now to perhaps think about. Are
But
you?
you think you would switch McAtee Darwin for
What I
Bowen
would do,
Archer?
if I was wildcarding now, I would do this, but the only difference is I would have Bowen instead of McAtee and Archer instead of Darwin,
Yeah,
because I
so just
prefer
flip the
Bowen to
system.
Darwin, and that's basically the choice you got. Is Bowen better than Darwin? My answer to that is yes, but if your answer to that
Yeah,
is no, then but
I think long term, he feels like the more stable pick, Bowen,
yeah,
doesn't he?
yeah,
It's just whether you want to try and plug into this little 3 game run. Darwin,
yeah,
as soon as we get to game week 13, international break again, he's going to have to be sold then, I
yeah, yeah,
think. So this is a short term
yeah.
play, and it's whether or not I think we're going to get enough minutes out of
But
him.
as I said, it's easy to do. Darwin, you've got choices. You could go just move Darwin to Alvarez.
Yeah,
That's easy.
yeah.
You can move him to a Brighton striker if you want to take a punt there. But also, if you've got 2 free transfers, you could just do that Bowen. You could do McAtee to a whole number of midfielders, possibly
Mhm.
Bowen, and then move Darwin down to Archer. So it's a nice, easy switch. It's just 2 moves. That's
Mhm.
why I like this. But okay, let's put my team up then. So obviously, I won't spend so much time on this because I'm not wildcarding. It's not very exciting. So I've got Areola in goal against Everton, Pedro Porro against Crystal Palace, Matty Cash, Dan Burn against Wolves. I've got Maddison, Salah, who I'm going to captain, and then Bowen. And then up front, I've got Watkins and Haaland. And also, I've got Son and Neto currently. But I have enough money, and I should have enough money come Friday, barring some unforeseen changes in the market. I should have enough to do Son and Neto to Matoma and Saka. So then I'll be looking at a midfield of Maddison, Saka, Matoma, Salah captain, and Bowen, which I really like. Even if it doesn't get me points, I just like to look at that. And then on my bench, I've got Turner, who's going to stay on my bench for a while. Anderson, who's still a good first sub.
Could be useful to have. So
Yep,
in
and
the next
I
few
mean, we
weeks.
looked at Crystal Palace's fixtures. Yeah, I mean,
Mm.
I can play if needs be. If there's an injury to Porro, Cash, or Burn, Anderson, I can play any of game week 11 through to 15 easily because I think there's clean sheet potential in all of those: Burnley, Everton, Luton, West Ham might be tricky, and then Bournemouth. So I think Anderson's playable in any of those. I've also got Archer. And I've got a Tarek Lamptey as well. I'm waiting for him to return, see if he gets some minutes. But I don't anticipate ever playing Tarek Lamptey. But if he's fit, if he can play, and he's not playing in Europe, and for example, in
Yeah.
game week 11, they've got a blank week, so he could easily play against Everton in game week 11. I think Tarek Lamptey's good, but
I think 13's a problem for a lot of defences, isn't it? Isn't it
yeah,
as well? I can remember looking at that because you've got, I think Spurs play Villa, so you've got them up against
yeah,
each
yeah.
other. I think Newcastle have got Chelsea. So Lamptey then, if it could be really useful that week if you think he's going to play
Yeah, I
because they've
mean,
got
so
Forest.
Tottenham are home to Aston Villa, so Matty Cash is away to Tottenham.
Mm,
So yeah, I'd be tempted to try and play Lamptey over Cash, for example,
yeah,
because
I would.
Lamptey
Yeah,
is up against Nottingham Forest, and certainly play Anderson against who's up against Luton that week. So Anderson
yeah, it's well
don't
set
play.
up. This,
So
yeah.
so that's why. To be honest, I can't claim that I did that deliberately. You've just simply told me about that. So
But it's fallen nicely. No, because
pure luck.
yeah, it's just the thing on the wild card. You
Yeah,
kind of plot a few weeks out, don't you? And
yeah,
that
yeah.
was one of the reasons why I considered Gahey over Colwell as well, because he might help out around about then. And
Yeah,
but for you, if Lamptey and
yeah,
Anderson
yeah,
are fit that week,
yeah,
and well, Anderson will play, but if
yeah,
Lamptey is, you've got options. So.
yeah. Definitely options. And who knows if I've got a little bit of money, I can always upgrade Lamptey if I need to. Because yeah, I like a player like that. on my bench. As you said, you're not going to play a lot of it. In your team, it'll be a Burnley defender. So, it's the same difference, really. It's a play you probably won't play that much, but you might need them because Burnley's fixtures are pretty good. No, they got Bournemouth and Crystal Palace. Then they do have Arsenal in game week 12, but then they got West Ham. That's tough. Then Sheffield United.
Yeah, if you do need to call them, and that West Ham fixture isn't great at home, but I might have to play them that week, and at least it's a home game against not a elite attack.
Yeah. It's a shame that Bayer's not available because if they can get a clean sheet, he should be in the bonus, but he's injured at the moment.
And Van Heck isn't nailed at Brighton, is he, Joe? Again, it's difficult.
It's like with the goalkeeper, like with Ferguson and Welbeck. Van Heck and Webster are competing for the same place. I've said many times I'm part of the predicting team on Twitter for Brighton's, and it's tough each week. I think I got last week I got 7 out of 11 or 6 out of 11.
It's hard. I mean, I do the Villa
Milner,
one.
right? But I've got I probably fell on the wrong side of Steele Verbruggen, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I do the Villa one each week, and that mainly comes down to is Cash going to play right back or right wing, and it's very much that's what it comes down to, and that dictates the rest of your picks. Yeah. With Brighton, I can imagine you have to sit down and actually give yourself some time to kind of go through it all. And
I think most of us are running on an average of somewhere between 7 and 8 out of 11 each week.
Yeah, you see the Villa ones are over 10, most of us, but it's just much easier. You know, it's not hard to predict. Whereas De Zerbi, that's probably beyond Guardiola. That's the toughest job, I think, to predict.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we don't get the credit we deserve for getting it wrong each week. But yeah, it is really tough there. And once Tariq Lamptey's fit again, there we go. Who's going to play on the right? Will it be Veltman? Will it be Gross? Will it be Lamptey? There's right.
You might find him out of position in Marsh's spot one game, Lamptey, maybe. Yeah,
and then Marsh is indeed out of position in Estupiñán's spot, and it just goes on like that. So sometimes you can get like the Eric Morecambe line. You can get the right players, but not necessarily in the right order. So it's tricky. Anyway, Tom, good luck with your wild card. I think it's really well set up in game week 10. It looks really whichever one you go for, it looks well set up to move to whatever you want, really. So it looks like a good wild card for the future. Excellent. Good luck everyone watching and listening. Do remember to subscribe. Do remember to press that like button. It really helps us out. And good luck with your game week 10. See you soon.
Cheers, Jack.